Hello, everybody. This is Mike Trone with Tronester Teaches. We are doing a Zoom Bible study. I'm basically explaining information that I have, and everybody else will question and answer. This is just like a live study that um, anybody can participate with later. If you have questions, go ahead and type them in the comments. Questions in regards to what we speak about today. But I just wanted to introduce the study. We're starting with Genesis 1:1, and I'm almost positive I'm only going to make it through Genesis 1:1 in this study. So just be prepared for us to only make it through one verse. But we're going to go ahead and get started. And of course, this is a study dedicated to Yeshua. So I'm going to go ahead and let my beautiful wife, Stacy, pray us in, and I'm going to mute. So
Hey everybody. Dear Yeshua, thank you for this meeting and this time together, and please let it be edifying to everyone, and let us all learn something in this. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
thank you, babe. All right, so we're going to start. This is a study on Genesis. So um, I'm going to go ahead and get my Bible open to Genesis 1:1. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to read Genesis 1:1, and then I'm going to start going into the information associated with it. There's a lot of physics that's going to be associated with this study. So just letting everybody know, I'm going to do my best to not make it go over people's heads, but there's a lot of technical information. So again, if you have any questions, go ahead, and if you're watching this video after it's been live, go ahead and type your question in the comments and I will get to them as I can. But we know Genesis 1:1 is, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. But we know that this verse is really not written in English. It's written in Hebrew. And so it's Bereshit bara Elohim et Shemaim et Eretz. This is the Hebrew. Now, Genesis 1:1 is talking about the literal beginning. And before I go into the physics information, I'd like to, I'm going to screen share real quick. And I'm going to show everybody, where is screen share? Oh, there it is. Share screen. Okay, so we're going to look at Genesis 1:1. I am, for anybody wondering, this is the Blue Letter Bible app. I use it because I can go to the Septuagint, the LXX version of all of these translations, so you can read it in both Hebrew and Greek, which is valuable. So I like the Blue Letter Bible app. I suggest everybody that's watching download it. One of the better free applications. Now, Genesis 1:1. It starts off with Bereshit, and in English, it's roughly translated as 3 words: in the beginning. It really isn't 3 words though. It's really just 1 word: beginnings. And again, that's beginnings, the very start. This is before time, right? So this is the beginning of time. Now, for those that understand a little bit of physics, we know that space and time are woven together. They are not separate, and no physicist, when speaking of space or time, will speak of them separate. Time and space are together. This is how most physicists look at things. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and into this screen share real quick, and then I'm going to pull up my my slides for this study. If at any time somebody that's in here has a question, go ahead and just let me know, because I won't be on my Zoom. I won't be able to see if your hand is raised. So just go ahead and say, hey, Mike, and we'll go over it. But let me get over to my gallery. Okay. Now, in Genesis 1:1, we have the beginning of time and space. And it's interesting when we look at physics, when we look at modern physics, we see that modern physics has this thing called the Big Bang. This is how they explain the beginning of the universe. This is how they explain the start of space time. This is how we explain the start of matter. And um, a physicist will say to you, first there was nothing and then it exploded. In my mind, that makes no sense, right? So to a human mind, most human minds, nothing can explode. Nothing cannot explode. There's nothing to explode. How can something that's nothing, because it's not something, it's nothing, how can nothing even explode? Because an explosion is something. So we have a paradox. Paradox resolution is something that a lot of physicists will take a class on, and actually many biblical theists will actually take a class on paradox resolution, how to resolve the paradoxes in our universe. Some paradoxes in our universe are like the Fermi paradox. Did intelligent life get so advanced that it just never wanted to talk to us? Or are we the only intelligent life out there? Fermi paradox is again another type of one of those paradoxes that's seemingly unanswerable. Just as the paradox of um, I've had I've had many people ask me a similar question, and what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? This is a common riddle that many people, um, it's not something that you can easily overcome because a chicken comes from an egg, but how did the egg get there if there was no chicken? Uh, Physicists and I can't believe it's an actual study, but evolutionists, which that, to me, that's an oxymoron. Um, the study of something that didn't happen. Evolution is it's not real. There's no real evidence for it. Um, a lot of people will quote evidence for it, but it's just one of those things that's not true. It's just not true. But in Genesis 1:1, we have this paradox of what came first. Did space come first because there has to be a place for something? Or did something come first because something would have to have space to be in? So, and when did it come first? But in order for us to answer the question of when, there has to be time, right? So, without time, without space, without matter, it's a paradox. Which came first? Um, I've uh, I've pondered this question many times in my life, and it's only until recently plasma physics really opened the doors for how to answer this paradox. And I'm going to go ahead and read a little further in Genesis. So I'm going to go ahead and screen share some more. And we're just going to go over a few verses in Genesis, but then we're going to skip back to Genesis 1:1 and really go in depth into what it says. Screen share. And so in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, tohu vabohu, and darkness was on the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. Then God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw the light that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. So the evening and the morning were the first day. Then God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And thus God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so. Let's stop at verse 7. Okay, so we see a sequence of events here, right? So we see beginning, God created the heavens. What came first? Well, the beginning, time. time we see here was first. That's literally first in this verse. The word Bereshit literally means the beginning of time. So beginning, time. God created, so now we have mass, right? So time, then God created the heavens, space, and the earth, matter. Okay. So now any physicist would look at this and say, well, obviously you can't create something without mass. So mass would have to be before matter. And space, seeing here in the beginning, space and time would have to be there in order for there to be beginning. And in order for something to have mass, there has to be space for it to have mass in, and time has to have started in order for it to be a when. Like, when did this happen? Beginning. So we see that the Bible here in Genesis 1:1 answers the paradox of which came first. So we see that the Bible, this is an interesting point, but the Bible is literally a paradox resolution. This tool, that's what the Bible is a tool. It is the word, it is the living word of God, but it is also a valuable tool that God has put here on this earth for us to understand the things that happen around us. Every single different interaction and force is predicted in Genesis and other books of the Bible. Every prophecy, every single thing that is ever going to happen in the universe is in this book. It is an inerrant, timeless, or outside of time tool, almost like a window into how everything works, why it works, and why God created all of these things to work. An amazing book. Now, before I go into the plasma physics associated with this, I want to make this point. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my gallery. So Genesis 1:1 is interesting. It has geometrical value. So let's look at the Hebrew. This is the Hebrew geometrical value breakdown. Hebrew letter, each Hebrew letter, its English equivalent, its numeration or its numeric value, its final form letter, and then Romanized letters, the Hebrew letter Aleph, that's Romanized. That means it's rendered in a way that we can read from an English mindset. But every single verse in the Old Testament is written in either Hebrew or Aramaic. Aramaic is very heavily written in the book of Daniel. The first few chapters of Daniel specifically are written in Aramaic, especially the section that is specifically written by Nebuchadnezzar. But Hebrew and Aramaic are very similar languages. Hebrew, on the other hand, has a very important numbered system that can be used as a code deciphering tool. Now, the reason why I bring this up is Genesis 1:1. This is Genesis 1:1. So the sum, 2701, the number of letters is 28. The product of the letters is 23.887 by 10 to the 27. Number of words, 7. Product of the words, 304, 153, 525, 784, 175, 760. The letters weight is 668, 860410 by 10 to the 27th power. The words weight, not the letters weight, is 2129, and you see that long number at the very bottom there. So the number of the letters times the product of the letters divided by the number of the words times the product of the words equals this number right here, 3.1415. And then it goes on. the first 5 numbers or the first 5 decimal points of a product we know as pi. Now, the calculation of any spherical object is calculated by the number pi. The number pi is hidden here in Genesis 1:1. Now let's think, who wrote the book of Genesis? The book of Genesis was written by Moses, roughly 1400 to or 1500 to 1400 BC, somewhere in that time frame. We're talking about 1500 years before Jesus walked the earth and 3500 years before we ever existed. Now, when was the first calculation of pi done? Well, the first calculation of pi was done in 287 BC by Archimedes of Syracuse. And this was a rough estimation of pi. The Egyptians in roughly 1000 BC calculated pi as 3.1782, somewhere around there. It was a rough estimation of pi, but wasn't exact. But Archimedes of Syracuse came up with pi as 3.1415, and it was not accurately depicted as a long decimal point system, as in 3.1415, going on for 30,000 characters, until 2009, when we computerized the calculation of pi. So pi is a very intricate and important number in our entire universe. So it governs how light is displaced on surfaces. It governs how spheres react. It governs the orbits of planets. It governs the rotational forces of each of those planets. It governs many things. It is a constant of our universe, and it is obviously very important to God for him to hide it in Genesis 1:1. Let me go ahead and go back. Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And this verse that was written in let's say 1450 BC, which wasn't calculated until 287 BC, which wasn't accurately calculated until 2009 AD. So recent, very recent. And it's hidden here in Genesis 1:1. So what would be the point of hiding pi in Genesis 1:1? Why is this important? This is what I would call, and Chuck Missler and Barry Setterfield and many other scholars would call, a remez, a hint of something hidden. God is literally saying, see this, dig here. So we see the Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, time, God created mass, the heavens, matter, and earth, right? So we see that space, time, mass, matter, and energy are all created here in Genesis 1:1. Now, if we look at the universe from the typical presuppositions that we have about how everything was formed, coming into the study of scripture, I had presuppositions that I was concrete in about things that I really truly didn't fully understand. I coming into these studies of scriptures and coming closer and closer to trying to understand the fullness that God has given us in these scriptures, I had specific presuppositions that it actually took me years to overcome. One of those presuppositions was that uh, that geology, or the planet, and plate tectonics and all of these things formed over billions of years. And as we go further in the study in Genesis in later sessions, we'll see that actually these formations, these processes were formed in a very short period of time. Plate tectonics and the separation and division of all of the continents actually occurred in a really short range of time and not over billions of years. And so I had presuppositions of that. But as I read through the scriptures, God showed me, no, you're wrong. And I had to change my view on that. As God showed me more information, my view changed about the geologic composition and makeup of the planet Earth and how these processes occurred. I actually believed for a long time that fossils were a fossil record of some form of evolution. And I was incorrect about that, because we've now been able to accurately date some of these fossils to the same time period, because now we are understanding more and more how our universe is working as modern physics advances. But here we see Genesis 1:1 has pi hidden in it and explains the formation, and it answers the paradox of what came first: space, time, matter, mass, energy. What had to come first? And we see Genesis 1:1 answer that question. So now I'm going to go ahead and get into my slides. Am I still screen sharing? Yes, I'm still screen sharing. Okay. So let me go back to my slides. Now that we understand a hidden mathematical constant in Genesis 1:1, we can assume safely that the Bible is trying to tell us something here. For physics to even be hidden in the Bible, many scientists and physicists say that the Bible and physics don't go hand in hand. I would disagree. I believe that physics proves what the Bible has already told us. And as we go through the study, all of you that are watching after we've recorded this, again, if you have questions, put them in the comments. But if you have a presupposition that this maybe answers that question, go ahead and put that in the comments as well. We all have questions that we come into scriptures with, questions that we want answered, because we know that the scriptures are going to give us those answers. But so let's start with here. This is an analysis of something we know as the cosmic microwave background radiation. This is a huge envelope that completely encompasses our universe. And I'm going to go ahead and actually show a rendering of the cosmic microwave background radiation. So this is scans that we took, and this is a rough estimation of our known universe, and something is enveloping all of it, and it's a heat differential that is throughout all of space, envelops all of space, time, matter, energy, things like that. Now in Genesis 1:1, we see that in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. We know it. By what way did he do that? Well, let's look at John 1:1 for a second, because the Old Testament and the New Testament are actually, oh, I gotta go to Revelation. The Old Testament and the New Testament are actually one book. Excuse me. Ah. So John 1:1 has, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And he was in the beginning with God, and all things were made through him, and without him nothing was made that was made. And in him was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not comprehend it. So in John 1:1, we see that in the beginning was the Word. So, and it also says here in John 1:1 that all things were made through him, and without him nothing was made that was made. So in John 1:1, it says that the Word is the means by which everything was made, and nothing was made that was made without him. So this means that the Genesis 1:1 is God speaking the universe into existence. The Word of God through the word of God, the universe was created. So we see that he spoke the universe into existence. Now, this cosmic microwave background radiation that I'm showing you, this visual here on the screen, this cosmic microwave background radiation has something traveling through it at 57% the speed of light. And what it has traveling through it at 57% the speed of light are these three distinct peaks that are sound waves. These sound waves at 57% the speed of light reverberate and echo through the entire universe encompassed by the cosmic microwave background radiation. Now, when we scanned the cosmic microwave background radiation, which is just like a giant capsule that the whole universe is in, all galaxies and everything that the Hubble telescope has taken pictures of, all of those galaxies, NGC 1701 and other spiral arm galaxies that are far distant off, and those red-shifted galaxies at what they say is the beginnings of the Big Bang, all of these things are enveloped in a jar called the cosmic microwave background radiation. And within the cosmic microwave background radiation, within all of our universe, echoing through this radiation are these three peak sound waves, and they travel and reverberate through our universe at 57% the speed of light. The speed of light currently is roughly 300,000 kilometers per second. 187,532 miles per second. So this is the trusted speed of light. This is what we measure the speed of light at currently in our day and age. So 57% of that is quite an extensively fast speed of sound. Who knew that sound could travel that fast? But these are three peaks. Now, if Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and that all things were created through the Word, and if without the Word, nothing would have been created that was created, then it was sound, God's voice, that spoke the universe into existence. And by saying beginning, Bereshit, if he used that word, we don't know, but by saying this word, time existed, space and time existed, and then heavens existed, and God created the heavens out of the mass that was there, and then the heavens, and then the earth, and all of these things were spoken into existence. Now, I don't like to get into Trinitarian arguments, and I typically like to steer away from arguments about that. But I will provide the information for you, and you can make your own assessment of the data yourself. Remember, Acts 17:11, seek all things in the scriptures to prove whether they're true or not. And so I encourage you to do that yourself. But there are three distinct peaks, one major peak and two smaller peaks in this sound wave. Now, they're peaks in A, F sharp, and C sharp. And this is at the deepest bass that can be picked up by our sensors. And there are three distinct sound waves. You have Yeshua, the Ruach HaKodesh, and Yod He Vav He. They are one, but there are three distinct sound waves here. So I'll let the data and let you make any assessments that you wish to make on this information yourself. I'm not here to make you think any specific way. I'm here to give you all of the information that I have at my fingertips. So I bring into view here that this is a true actual scan representation of our analysis of these sound waves traveling through space. This is fact. This is something that really, truly occurs in space. Scientists, many physicists rely heavily on this information for measuring things in space, astrophysicists and things like that. These are now factual bits of information. These are actual results that we have gained. So knowing that there are three distinct sound waves, and there are some physicists who believe that it was not the cosmic microwave background radiation that emanated these sound waves, but it was these sound waves that created space, time, and the cosmic microwave background radiation itself. So, and I'll leave that at that. But so this cosmic microwave background radiation is proof of the beginnings of our universe, that there was a beginning. This proves it to be finite. This proves Genesis 1:1 correct, because in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. This proves a beginning. This proves the beginning of time. Cosmic microwave background radiation, essentially, and these sound waves are the echoes of the creation of time, of space-time. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and go back over here to my gallery. Now, many physicists in our universe, or on our planet, I don't know why I said in our universe, many physicists on our planet would say that the universe was created by gravitational forces. Now, let me go to my. So, this image here, go ahead and turn my phone outside. This image here is basically a very simple rendition of how physicists say the creation of our universe happened. Gas pressure pushes in on a nebula. The nebula then begins to spin around. This is called the nebular hypothesis. The nebula then begins to spin around. Gravity causes all of this to collapse on itself. And then we have it becomes dense and packed together, and gravity causes all of these things to occur. The issue we have in physics is that there's always a time problem when using gravity. Things happen over billions, hundreds of millions, and billions of years when gravity is the driving force. But I would like to make a proposal for you. So we have the biblical account, which contradicts the gravitational hypothesis or the nebular hypothesis for the formation of galaxies, stars, and things in space. Gravity says that it takes billions of years for these stars to form. 4.3 billion years, supposedly, it took our star, the sun, to form in our solar system under the gravitational principle. Now, what if gravity is not what is the driving factor in our universe? There are multiple forces. There are the weak and strong nuclear forces. There's electromagnetism, and then there's gravity. And there's other driving factors. We have the Higgs field, which gives particles their mass and things like that. But electromagnetism is 10 to the 24th times stronger than gravity. I will show you that on my calculator so you can really get a view for how big this number is. But 10 with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I can't enter more than 15 digits. Add another 10 zeros to this number that you're seeing on your screen, and that is how much stronger electromagnetic forces are than gravity. Gravity is actually one of the weakest forces in our entire universe. Gravity is dependent on space to curve to create the gravity that we see. So this nebular hypothesis here has a major time problem. It takes too long for all of these processes to form planets and stars, and for that time frame to match with the biblical account. Now, I'm going to show you some lab experiments. These are plasma filament lab experiments done by Anthony L. Peratt of Los Alamos Laboratories. And in the lab, we were able to take two, not me, I'm not saying we as in I was there, but we as a scientific community were able to take 2 or 3 plasma filaments and coalesce their magnetic fields together to create miniature galaxies in the lab. And it took between 1 and 2/10 of a second for these miniature galaxies to form. And the interesting thing is that the spin of the center of each one of these miniature galaxies spins at the same rate of speed as the outside arms. Anybody that knows anything about centripetal force, centrifugal force, however you want to pronounce it, anybody that understands electromagnetism will understand that without electromagnetism, when you spin something, it completely disintegrates. If you spin a magnet, if you take a magnet and you break it into a bunch of pieces and you put it together so that it's a big clump of a bunch of chunks, it's magnetic, they're all attracted to each other, and you then spin this magnet at very high speeds, for some reason, the magnetic forces overcome the forces that pull on it via centrifugal force. So the spinning, the rotational kinetic energy is overcome by the magnetic forces that attract those pieces of metal together. Now, I find it very interesting that we know via lab experiments. So this is from the Peratt lab experiment. And notice this is called the barred spiral. This is NGC 1300 here on the left-hand side. NGC 1300, plasma physicists believe it was formed by 2 plasma filaments coming together. And if you look at the upper image that was formed in the lab and the lower image that was formed in space, those 2 images, aside from coloration, are almost identical. Now, this is where it gets very interesting. Under nuclear forces, which is what the nuclear and gravitational forces, which is the common understanding of how our universe was formed via this nebular hypothesis. Under those circumstances, you cannot recreate galaxies in the lab with nuclear forces. You cannot recreate them with gravitational forces, but you can recreate them with electromagnetic forces. And so we see almost a mirror image of those galaxies that we're able to form in the lab. Now, this is like a rendition of what they believe. This is their rendition of the Big Bang. Okay, so put it on its side so you can see better. But this is their rendition of the Big Bang, a central point, and everything shoots out, and it's enveloped by the circular cosmic microwave background radiation. So, but this is a spectral analysis by the Hubble telescope in concert with the deep radio. I forget its name. It is an earthbound satellite, or I mean, an earthbound telescope that uses thermal analysis and spectral analysis to create images for us to look at. This is both the Hubble's image as well as a thermal analysis of the same area of space. And these are all of those little dots that you see on the screen here are all galaxies. Notice that they're all connected by an interwoven finger-like structure or spider web-like structure that connects every single one of these galaxies, aside from a few that are dotted in between, but we can see a base skeletal structure. These are all plasma filaments. This is, again, a similar image. Those are all galaxies that are all along plasma filaments in space. So plasma has, hold on, let me get to the image. Plasma comes in basically three types of plasma. We have arc mode, glow mode. Here, let me go back. There's another image that I have that's a better analysis. So here you go. So these are the four different types of plasma that we have in space and in our universe. Lightning is plasma. The aurora borealis is plasma. The fancy little ball of plasma, and it creates little arcs on the inside of it. And our sun is plasma. Neon signs, flames are a form of plasma. Nebulas in space, and solar wind. They're all forms of plasma. Now, plasma has specific different types of modes, right? So you have arc mode, you have glow mode, and these are just different ways that plasma behaves. So when plasma is super electromagnetically charged, it will arc. It will arc between places. A welder is a prime example of arcing type plasma. Let me see if I can find that image again. A welder, many people are familiar with how a welding machine works. You basically connect two leads to the piece of metal that you're welding on, and at the connection point, the metal will heat up and melt instantaneously. So lightning, another form, it's like welding, but these are all, and then the sun, these are all arc mode with a high current, a high electromagnetic field. Now, electromagnetic fields operate as you see here on the screen. An electromagnetic current will travel around a wire. So if you take a copper tube and you run a magnet through it, many people have seen that experiment before. If you take a copper tube and you run a magnet through it, it creates a circling magnetic field. You see the blue circular arrows. That is a circling magnetic field around the electrical wire or copper tube with magnet in it. And it always goes under the right hand rules. So if you were to grab the wire with your right hand, the direction that your fingers curl over the wire, that's the direction of the magnetic field. And the direction that your thumb is pointed is the direction of current. This is true in all electrical wires and for every occurrence of electromagnetic energy on our planet. Electrical energy, electrical current creates a magnetic field, a circling magnetic field. This is extremely important when looking at this picture of these galaxies, because plasma filaments are just like giant wires in space. And so when you look at this image of galaxies, we notice that all of these galaxies are connected by these plasma filaments. Now let's look at a rendition of a plasma filament in space, and we can kind of see a visual representation of what a plasma filament would look like in space. So a plasma filament in space looks like this. This is actually a spectral analysis of a section of a plasma filament that we found in space. Notice the dark on this right image, notice the dark center and many little arms running through it. Imagine that as a cutoff section of a wire. right? An electrical wire in your house. The orange area is where the cut was occurred. Now, the green acts as an insulator around the highly charged center or core, just like wires. Let's look at an image of wires real quick. Where is it? Where is it? Just as a wire in your wall of your house is made up of a bunch of different little wires that are then insulated by an insulator that keeps all of those wires bundled together. Well, this is similar. This is a plasma filament that we found in space. And when taking a cross section of it, it looks very similar to the wires that you see there. Now, the right is an electromagnetic analysis. This is the magnetic field lines that would be associated with each of these wires. You'll notice that the wire on the left, the smaller wire, and looking at the right-hand image, you see a bunch of magnetic fields that are not densely or tightly packed together. They're kind of scattered in because of a weak magnetic field. Now, the bigger the wire, you go to the second wire, which is a larger gauge of wire, and you see that the magnetic field is a little more on that right image. The center magnetic field is a little more held together. But when you get to a densely packed wire, which is the furthest right, it is a black wire. It looks like a very heavy gauge wire. You'll notice in the right-hand image, you will again see that the magnetic fields are again even more densely and tightly packed together. So the larger the current that travels through the wire, the more ordered the electromagnetic field circling it will be. The same thing is true in space. This is a massive, many light year wide plasma filament in space. There is a central huge plasma filament that is insulated by billions of other green plasma filaments in this image. So when looking at this image, we see images in space. This is an image taken by Hubble telescope. We see in this image plasma filaments all woven together. Again, you see down the center going from middle left to the bottom right, you see a bunch of plasma filaments woven together, twisted together. Now, when these plasma filaments twist together, let's look at this. So this is now when these plasma filaments are twisted together, their electrical current aligns in directions. So they're all the electrical current is moving in the same direction, and all of the magnetic fields will move in the same direction. Again, remember that right hand rule. The direction your fingers curl over the magnetic or over the wire is the direction of the current, the spinning magnetic field, and the direction of your thumb is the direction that the current is traveling. Now, when plasma filaments come together, they do something known as a Bennett pinch. And let me get to the images that show a Bennett pinch in space. These are three images of three different star formations and nebulas. One of them is called the Butterfly Nebula. Another one is called the Moth Nebula, and I forget what the third one is called. But these three images on the right-hand side, let's make this bigger for you. These three images on the right-hand side are evidences in space as taken by pictures from the Hubble telescope of a Bennett pinch. And what you see on the left-hand side there is what is called the Bennett pinch. It is when circling magnetic fields on a plasma filament get intensely magnified. And when they are magnetically attracted to each other, the plasma filaments will then pinch in. Imagine you have wires in your house and two of the wires that are bare come into contact with each other. If for anybody that's ever jump started a car, you know if you accidentally hook the black jump cable to the positive side and the red jump cable to the negative side, you will get a giant arc, a big pop from your battery. This is, again, it's a type of welding. This is the same type of circumstance that occurs with a Bennett pinch in space. When a Bennett pinch occurs, something at the center known as a plasmoid forms. When a plasmoid forms, and let's look at, I have a picture of a digital representation of a lab experiment that was recently done. This is a plasmoid that they created in a lab. On the left here, you will see that this plasmoid has an ion beam and an electron beam and a circling magnetic field. Looking here, we see that again, this plasmoid was created by gas input and a heavy magnetic field, and it created this plasmoid in a lab. This is obviously an artist's rendition of this experiment because we wouldn't be able to see visual representations of this in this closed chamber. But when they created this, it had an ion beam and it had an electron beam coming from the north and south poles. These jets that we created in the lab match images that we have from the center of galaxies. I'm trying to get to the image. Where is it? Here we go. Again, this is when we look at galaxies, we see quasar jets, ion beams, and electron beams jetting out from the center of galaxies. And we see that this matches when a plasmoid is formed. And again, going back to this is lab experiments of galaxies being formed. We were actually able to recreate galaxies in the lab using plasma. We were also able to recreate, where is it at? A plasmoid in the lab that matches the polar jets shooting from stars and galaxies. And we were able to match these up with images that we have from space. Now, let's go back to Genesis. So in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Genesis 1:1. It's already got pi hidden in it. We've already gone over that. It's already got pi hidden in it, 3.1415. And it's also got the order, it's got a resolution for the paradox at the creation of our universe, the scientific paradox of the Big Bang. What came first? This is the chicken and the egg argument, which came first. And we see a resolution to that here in Genesis 1:1. We also see that before, so we see in verse 4, and God saw the light and it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. So we see that matter, the heavens, and the earth were all created before light shone. How is this possible if stars are basically giant furnaces? This is an understanding that I had for a very long time about the formation of stars, is that they were formed via nuclear processes. But the question I have is, in nuclear processes, the formation of a star, I'm just going to explain the nuclear process to you, but in a nuclear process, the formation of a star, heavy elements will gather at the core of a star. This is in the nuclear process. But when we do a spectral analysis of our sun, we see that iron actually is on the surface and in the atmosphere of the sun more densely than it is in the core. And when looking at sunspots, we see a differential in temperature. But with plasma, the heavier elements are ejected like sparks from your jump starter cables when you misapply them to your car, or like wires in your wall when they short out, or like Bennett pinches in space with the polar jets, the ion beam and the electron beam that we see that we see in stars in space. Now, there's a whole lot more information to go over here, but I'm actually gonna go ahead and start talking about. So we've established here in this study so far that plasma is throughout all of space. That we see plasma filaments in space, and we see that we can accurately reproduce the things that we see in space via the Hubble telescope in the lab using plasma. So and many physicists have now come to the understanding that our solar system and universe, our galaxy, solar system, universe, are 99% plasma. Now, with plasma physics, we no longer need to come up with fancy math to say, oh, there's invisible dark matter in space that causes all this gravity to form all of these planets and things like that. And with plasma physics, we can now match up the biblical account of in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Because with plasma, the filament, each filament in space, let me try to find an image. Bear with me here. I'm trying to sort through a bunch of information associated with this. Okay. So in plasma, you have plasma filaments that are all individual. You see here on the left-hand image, we see multiple plasma filaments. This is also a rendition. We'll see a Bennett pinch where these magnetic fields on these plasma filaments will pinch together. Now, these plasma filaments existed individually before they pinched together. So before they pinched together to create a central plasmoid, there was already circling magnetic fields and circling plasma jets. Now, that means that the Earth, if the sun is the central plasmoid of our solar system, this means that before the sun could emit light, or before the sun pinched in and created a mass of molten plasma, that the Earth could have existed separate from the sun. Not something to be ejected by the sun, as many people believed, or something to be captured by the sun, but the Earth could actually have existed before the sun Bennett pinched on itself and became a plasmoid. So we see that plasma physics gives an answer for why it is that the heavens and the earth were created before light was emitted from the sun. So plasma physics accurately answers that question. Now, there are 4 problems that the nebular hypothesis has for the formation of stars and galaxies in space. Number 1, sunspots have cool centers. I have images of radio spectral analysis or spectral analysis of sunspots and temperature differentials from sunspots to the surface of the sun. The atmosphere of the sun is millions of degrees hotter than the surface of the sun. And there's a very high percentage of heavy metals in the sun's atmosphere. As well, solar wind accelerates towards our outer solar system. Solar wind is basically positively charged plasma shot off of our sun that then, if it was discharged by nuclear forces, then the solar wind would lose energy as it leaves our solar system. But we have 3 measuring spaces, 3 satellites that measure the speed of solar wind as it leaves our solar system, and it actually increases in speed. Now, actually, what I'm going to do is go ahead and stop. Oh, run. There we go. I'm going to stop sharing for a second. Does anybody have any questions?
I did.
What was that?
I did. I put it in there. You were talking about all that plasma. I was wondering, are we plasma?
Um, no, because we're not hot enough to be plasma. Plasma operates at a very high temperature, so we're not.
When he spoke everything into existence, um, then we're vibration.
That's true. We are all a frequency. Every person is basically a frequency. All of our atoms emit frequencies.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to go back to screen sharing. I'm going to try to get through the rest of this. I'm going to try to get through the rest of this information in about 30 minutes, and then that'll be the end of session number 1. I'm just trying to explain the basis for Genesis 1:1 before we start going into any more information for it. But we'll go back to screen sharing, share my screen. Okay. So we understand that the universe is formed by plasma occurrences. We also understand that there are, I'll go into more explanation as to why the evidence that we have that the solar system was formed by plasma occurrences probably in the next session. But what I now want to touch on is earlier I had said that the speed of light was a constant. Now, in our next session, I'll be going over more detail on this topic as well. But it's believed by many physicists that the speed of light is constant. But I'm going to go ahead and show you something here. So this is from The Mysterious Universe by William Carlos, page 691. And these are a series of determinations in order of their dates given as follows, and the figures that indicate the velocity of the speed of light as in each experiment that it was measured. So you'll read here, in 1849, the speed of light was 313,000 kilometers per second. But in 1855, it was again measured 6 years later, and it was 298,000 kilometers per second. In 1855, again, it was measured at 305. Now, each of these have an error band, but we see, aside from 1855 and 1871, we see in 1849, 1855, 1885, 1902, 1906, 1924, and 1926, as we developed better and better measuring devices, the speed of light was slowing more and more. Now I'm going to show you a chart that shows the plot placement of all of these speed of light values. The speed of light has been measured 315 times over the last roughly 200 years. And in those roughly 200 years, we see that the first measurement was roughly 304, and then it dropped down to 303, and then we see it measured at 302, then 301, then we see a distinct regression curve to the speed of light. So we see in experiments that the speed of light is slowing down. And if you do mathematical calculations, and I'm not going to do those calculations here, but if we see that the speed of light was originally, let's say 304 at the first measurement in the 1800s, and that now the speed of light has curved and slowed down to just under 300,000, we see 4,000 kilometers per second that was lost on the speed of light over a 200-year period. Now, you can take a calculator, anybody that's watching, you could take a calculator and you can input this 200 years. Let's go 2,000 years ago, right? So if we lost 4,000 kilometers per second over 200 years, then it's safe to say that every 200 years, we lost another 4,000 kilometers per second, meaning that it was going faster and faster. If you add 4,000 kilometers per second every 200 years as you go back in time, then 2,000 years ago, the speed of light was almost 450,000 kilometers per second. And if you go back even further, we start getting into 500,000 kilometers per second. And then even further, we start getting to 1,000,000 kilometers per second. And then we start getting bigger in magnitudes. Going back more time, it's even faster. And so we can accurately calculate the speed of light thousands of years ago based on this math. Now, we don't know exactly what it changes, like what its regular change in measurement. Hold on, I'm going to actually mute because I gotta. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. It's going to get really loud for a second. It's going to get very loud for a second. Oh, here we go. Okay, it stopped. But we see that the speed of light is slowing down. Now, with the speed of light slowing down, this is an interesting factor as we get further into Genesis, because we see that in Genesis, that the speed that light happened 4 days after the beginning of creation, 4 days after Bereshit, the first word, beginnings, that light was then emitted by the sun. So that matches plasma physics very accurately. Now, I just wanted to show you guys this regression curve in the speed of light, because it's going to play a bigger factor as we get further into our study. But I've actually been on here for an hour and a half, so and we've only gotten through Genesis 1:1. I told you guys that this was going to take a long time, and there's still so much more information in Genesis 1:1, but I think I'm going to try to keep this at a reasonable level. So I'm going to go ahead and, now that I've piqued your interest with that speed of light, the regression curve of the speed of light, we'll go into more in depth on that next time we do this Friday study. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and stop. I'm going to ask my wife to pray us out, and then I'm going to go ahead and end the video there, and we will continue more on this basis of thinking next time. So let me go ahead and stop screen sharing, stop sharing. Stacy, do you think you could go ahead and pray us out, please?
Sure. Thank you, Yeshua, for this time together, and that it was truly edifying and educational. And please just keep your hand on these teachings so that they will be fruitful. In Yeshua's name, I pray.
Thank you, baby. Okay, so for everybody listening, if you got any questions, type them in the comments. I have still got so much more information to share on Genesis 1:1, but in the idea of keeping these to about an hour and a half to 2 hours, I don't want to go into too much. I don't want to bombard people with too much information. So I will go ahead and stop the study there, but I appreciate you guys watching. Again, you have any questions, put them down in the comments. And thank you guys, and praise Yeshua for this study. Have a good night, guys.